We've got the final product here and it's come up beautifully. Must be pretty happy, pretty proud.
Very happy.
You'd had some engine issues, some rust issues and things along the way.
Definitely when I started taking the panels off to paint it. As soon as the panels come apart, it was when the rust was kind of exposed. So that was the first big moment where it was like, oh shit, this is a way bigger job than I ever intended it to be. It was either cover it up and pretend it's not there or fix it. And I mean, going to that extent of pulling it apart, there's no point in not fixing it.
How do you go about learning how on the spot to do such incredible repairs to the length of what the rust issues were?
Yeah, I spent heaps of time on YouTube. I mean, that was where I learned to do everything really. That's where I've learned everything about four drives. So yeah, it's on YouTube, especially on Facebook. There's a Facebook page called 40 Series LandCruiser Owners. So it's all based in Australia and that's where I've gone for most of my information.
I know you've had some ridiculously late nights in the workshop and days on end. Would you do it all again?
Yes. Yeah, so I already want to get a ute and start and do up a ute, but do it completely factory spec.
Right.
But I'd never do it in the timeline that I did this. So 10 months was way too much involved. Like it was on the road when I got it. And yeah, when I went to paint it, I was like, oh, I'll do it in a weekend. How crazy. It took months before like there was color on it, you know? So once I pulled all the panels apart, I had to replace all the seals. And then I decided to go, you know, everyone suggested only using genuine seals. So that's the day the budget blew out. Most of the genuine seals and everything come from 4x4 spares. So they stock pretty much everything for this car, which is really good.
What drove you to the 40 Series?
I've always loved them. I've always loved the shape about it. And I guess I grew up four driving in an old Land Rover with my dad. So I was always around the older four drives. You know, the first time I saw one of these, I was like, wow.
How much of the build would you say you've personally done yourself?
About 95%. I'm very proud to stand back and look and go, yeah, you know, like, especially the paint job, it's one thing that it's very obvious. It obviously catches your attention as soon as you see it. So to stand back and say, I did that, you know, I'd never painted anything like this. I'd never used a spray gun. So I had no idea what I was doing, but I have the attitude where it's just give anything a go. If it goes wrong, then I'm going to learn from it. It's definitely a huge job. I mean, the prep work is the biggest part of it. The painting is the easier side, but you know, the prep work, you got to do it right or there's no point painting it. So it was actually painted out the front of the shed and the tub was painted first, rolled back in the shed, and then all the other panels, the doors, the windscreen, the guards, everything was painted individually. We had to rely on weather. And in Tasmania, it's very hard to have a still warm day. It definitely took a long time, probably 4 months' time, I think, to get it finished from the first day I painted to the last day. I'd always been a fan of the mustard 40 Series colour, so the factory colour. I'd always loved it. So I went with intentions of going with that shade, which is a lot darker than this one. And when I went to the paint shop, they didn't actually have that colour code. They couldn't mix it up for me. And so the guy pulled out his colour chart and there's probably 500 different shades of mustard and yellow. And this one was the brightest one out of all of them by a lot. And as soon as it was out in the sun, it just stood out to me and I was just like, yeah, that's it. So fell in love with it and that's how it became yellow.
I love the gull wing. Where did the inspiration or the idea come from introducing that into the vehicle?
Oh, it's been around for years. I wanted to do it on the Vitara. So I always wanted to have a four drive that I could have a gull wing on. So I actually went to a fabrication place in Launceston and got them to make it for me, yeah, because nobody makes a gull wing off the shelf or anything like that. It turned out better than I ever thought it could have.
I noticed you've decked out your own complete drawer and storage system at the back.
Yes.
How did that come along?
I guess it's hard to find stuff that's off the shelf for the older four drives. The Sasha needed to be in the back. I wanted to have the 12-volt panel in there as well. There's 3 drawers in the back. It's got all the four drive gear, all the tools, everything's housed in there, and it works like a treat.
It's not the original engine that came in the vehicle?
No.
What was the story? What happened and what have we ended up with?
So I bought it knowing that the engine was overheating. Buying a four drive and knowing that history on the motor, it just straight up, I wanted it gone. I wanted it to be reliable. And I managed to buy a 3B out of someone's paddock. It was just sitting on like a tyre, and the guy's like, yeah, it should run. And I ran with it. I was like, let's hope it does. And took it home, bolted in, fired it up, and here we are, touring Australia with it.
If we go back to your Suzuki days, what was it that drove you to ARB product?
I had bought the product for years. On the Vitara, there was plenty of stuff, recovery gear, the lockers, the compressor, it was all ARB, it was all stuff I'd purchased, I used constantly, and it worked. I've supported the product for ages, and yeah, so it's definitely great to jump on board for this build.
You want to quickly run us through, some of the key accessories that you've fitted to the 40?
Yeah, sure. I mean, starting from the front, we'll start with the obvious, the ARB bar on the front, the Bush Ranger spotlights, as well as the Bush Ranger winch, 2 aerials, so one's to the GME UHF and one's for the phone, Safari snorkel, 2 ARB light bars on the top, a tradesman's roof rack up on top as well with an ARB awning down this side and one on the rear as well. High lift jack is mounted on the other side. In the back there's the drawers in there with the ARB 47 litre fridge in there in a MSA drop down slide. Front and rear ARB air lockers. In the gull wing, the twin compressor, the 1500 watt red arc inverter, the Revolution batteries. We've got the full Old Man Emu suspension kit, airbag man airbags in the rear, and they're mostly just there because constantly changing the load. We're towing and we're not towing, so they're just there to adjust that and put it back up to the right height.
Going back to the fact that the project's finished, are there any highlights of the build from a learning point of view?
There's heaps. I mean, the key learning thing is do not set a deadline. If you do, make it maybe like 3 or 4 years, not 10 months. And I guess just research. The more you research stuff, the easier it's going to be. Just reach out, don't be afraid to ask people for help.
Is there anything that you haven't done that you wish you had have had done?
There's one thing, power steering. So we actually had most of the power steering parts to go in, and another thing with a tight deadline, we just ran out of times.
You've got the car completely decked out for touring. What are the plans? Are there any plans? What can we expect next?
Travel. We don't have any plans or any destination. We're just going to keep traveling around. We don't have a home to go back to. This is home now. We're just going to keep traveling on the road.
For those that want to continue to watch you and doing what you're doing, what are the avenues and the channels that we can all tune into?
Definitely Instagram. I guess that's the biggest one. Some videos to go up on YouTube and onto my website with a lot more content of the build to be posted up. fourdrivegirl.com.au.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming down. We've had a great couple of days out here in the high country up around the Woods Point area, and we're excited to hear that you're going to come along to our inaugural ARB event, 4x4 Culture Live, in March next year in South Australia.
Yes. So we'll be there. This will be there. We're super excited to be coming along.